There's a lot of ups and downs, but I think that the ups for me is always being, you know, hand by hand with the family and the individual, and just being very honest and transparent of what we know and what we don't know, and then help them assimilate that information, because there's a lot of limitations with our science.
Welcome to Empaths Anonymous,
a space for dreamers, healers, and feelers navigating the fine line between putting yourself first and holding space for others.
If you struggle with balancing your needs while still supporting your tribe, then you're in the right place.
Welcome to the support group.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Empaths Anonymous podcast. I'm Danny.
And I'm Christina.
Today we have a very interesting and educational, as always, we love to learn and teach on this podcast about aging. And the way that we talk about aging sometimes can be a little bit like, I don't want to get there. I don't want to go there. I want to have things figured out before I reach fill in the blank, whatever X age you want to be, right? But within the Latin community and within brown communities, it's not something that we talk about very openly. And so we're definitely going to get into that with our guest. But we do have a couple of things first to like housekeeping. You know what I mean?
We are talking about a Black-owned brand today. So we are partnering with the brand Living on the Butter Side, which is a self-care stationery brand that believes self-development starts with self-care, which means to figure out what you value, what are your hobbies, what interests you, you must dedicate some time to yourself. But that can be difficult because most of our time is occupied by our occupation and other things that aren't necessarily jobs, but as women are our job.
Oh, right. Talk about it.
So the Living on the Butterside brand invites women to take a step back and be intentional with their time and rediscover who they are through acts of self-care within their day. Ultimately, living on the butter side of life.
So cute. Available on Etsy, founded by Tiombe Huggins, who is also a self-care advocate and Pure Barre instructor. Tiombe has an inspiring story of leaving her 9-to-5 career to teach Pure Barre and create a brand that empowers women to prioritize themselves, reject hustle culture, and rediscover their joy through self-care practices. Yeah. So we have a couple of things that we have. So let's start with the playbooks. Yeah.
So these two things, you want to hold yours up too?
Yeah.
These two things, they come as sorry, the lights.
It's so bright.
They come as a set. So the Living on the Butter Side playbook is super cute. And it is a journal, basically. You can write out, it says select your vibe, which is really cute when you first open the journal. And then you talk about your values, you do a money analysis, and then it has all these pages to journal. I like that it's guided. It helps you to create a routine. How do you feel your body, move your body? But then it gives you a lot of space to like fill in the blanks yourself. So I love that it's a self-care journal, and it's something that I am going to be using alongside, starting my entrepreneur journey, because that's something that can be a little hard for me to dial in on. There's activities. It's really cool.
And we always love when there's no pre-printed dates.
Yeah.
Especially for us girlies who just don't really get around to it all the time. That's literally the point of a self-care journal. We get it. But when there are pre-printed dates, that really overwhelms me. And in my ADHD brain, I really can't deal with, I will get really upset if I see that I skipped a day. And for this, you write in your own date.
Yes. Yeah, so it has a planner in the back, which is cool. Which, honestly, I have been asking for a long time. A journal / planner / I don't know, practice, daily gratitude check-in. That's all in one. Because I have so many notebooks and just so much shit. I have to bring my planner, then I have to bring my notebook. Exactly. And, you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's so much. I like that this has everything all in one spot. So definitely excited to continue to use this.
Yeah, we're going to link everything as well. And what I have is the little notepad, and it's got boxes. I know if you're watching on the YouTube, or Spotify video, it's very difficult to see because of the glare, but let me just break it down for you. So it's called Living on the Butter Side Priorities, and we love a little priority list. Sometimes you can't get into the journal, so you got to keep this on your desk, keep it wherever you frequent the most. And I don't know, jot down whenever you're feeling like it, these 3 little boxes that you have as acts of self-care. So what are you going to do today to practice self-care? And then a to-do list, because we always got stuff to do. And then notes. So I really like it's able to be ripped off, throw it in your bag, and have it as a daily reminder. It's like, these are the things I need to do, but every single time you look at your to-do list, you're also reminded of how to practice self-care. So really cutesy.
Yeah.
We're super thankful to Tiombe for showing us.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. So excited to always highlight Black-owned business, small businesses. So as we said, we'll link all of her stuff in the description, and we are just so happy to be introduced to the brand.
Yeah. We did forget. What is in your cup today, sister?
Yeah, today I'm drinking my brain coffee.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I have a new alert, guys, but please don't sell this out. Because I told everybody at my work about it too, like, oh, I'm going to go get it right now.
Oh, no.
I got a new protein because I'm a plant-based protein girly because all of the normal ones have milk in them and I'm lactose intolerant. So it's called Cachava. And they had like 4 or 5 different flavors. I went with vanilla because it felt like the safest since I hadn't tried the brand before. But what I love about it is it has 20 grams of protein in a serving.
Which is a scoop?
Technically 2.
Okay.
So I do 1 scoop, but like sometimes I'll do 1 scoop in the morning and then 1 scoop at night or whatever like that, or throughout the day after I work out. But yeah, 20 grams of protein. And then in the protein also, there are vitamins up the ass.
I did see the list. It's extensive.
Yeah, there's like all the B's, the vitamin D, the C. It has like riboflavin. It has biotin. It just has like, and it has a bunch of vegetables too. So you're getting your like daily vegetable intake. It has everything, and
This
it doesn't
has everything.
and it doesn't taste like cardboard because most plant-based proteins taste disgusting.
I have like a really grody aftertaste.
It actually has a really mild flavor, so it makes it nice to mix in things. So I put it in my coffee with my Symbiotica, of course. So that's what I have in my cup today.
Okay. And emotionally?
Yeah, emotionally, I don't know. I will say, like, what was in my dream today.
Please.
And this could also be because I went down, like, a rabbit hole. And I watched that whole series about Selena Gomez and Hailey Bieber and all of that. And I just have been really, like, worried about Justin Bieber lately. I wouldn't say I'm a believer, but I've just always had a soft spot for him.
Oh, for sure.
And, you know, back in my church days, I would pray for him all the time.
Oh my God, that's actually really cute.
It is really cute.
I feel like you're definitely not the first person to do that. And I'm sure there's still a lot of people praying for Justin right now.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, prayer doesn't have to be religious, right? Like, I can still like, think of him and be like, oh, like, sending out a prayer, hope he's okay, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, sending out positive vibes, healthy vibes.
Yeah.
I think we just get a little bit nervous sometimes. He's got a past that includes a lot of struggle and trauma. I think people forget that can still happen to you, even if you are a multimillionaire and a celebrity, so.
Right, yeah. So my dream was I was very distressed because for whatever reason, you and I were tasked with, like, getting him, like, we had to go through all these like underground like tunnels and like pass all these security checks and stuff to get him to like basically like, is it the CIA or the FBI that protects you when like someone's gonna kill you?
I think FBI.
Yeah, we had to get him to the FBI, and it was just like, it felt like an action movie. It felt like we were like Keanu Reeves. You know what I mean? Oh my God,
that actually sounds like a really fun dream.
It was, but it was stressful.
Yeah, fun and stressful.
Yeah, and he was like, well, the part that was scary was that he was like skin and bones. He was like gray. Like, he was not doing well because he like is suspecting that all these people are going to kill him. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that was my dream. So that's in my cup this morning because I like just like woke up very like, I'm gonna save the world today.
Yeah,
because that's what I was doing.
That's what you were doing.
I mean, I wasn't saving the world. I was just saving Justin Bieber.
Yeah, but it's the feeling. It's the feeling of heroism.
Yeah. What is in your cup?
I have a coffee from the house. Been getting really good at saving money these days. It is coffee from home. I think it's Lavazza espresso beans in the coffee maker, and I did Milk, that almond milk brand and oat milk brand.
Are you liking it?
It's good.
Yeah.
It's sweeter than I thought it would be. So when I first tried it, I think I put too much and it was too sweet. But I tried the caramel flavor, so I think I'm gonna do.
It's already gonna be a little sweet.
Yeah,
'cause
I'm
it's
gonna do
caramel.
vanilla next time.
Okay.
And it comes in a small container, but it's good. So
At least
that's
you don't
it.
have to use a lot if it's super sweet, you know?
Exactly. And it's in my Powell's Books mug, you guys. If you guys know about Powell's Books, it's a huge independent bookstore. Hold on, I'm trying to show my owl. One second.
Yeah, it's an owl on some books.
It gives me Harry Potter vibes.
It does.
If you've been to Portland, Oregon, you know about Powell's Books. I guess even if you've not been to Portland, Oregon, you might also still know about Powell's Books if you're a reader. But I used to go there all the time, and every time I went, I would get a mug as a collectible.
Oh,
So,
yeah, because you have a few. You have that one. You have
I
like
do.
a yellow one.
The yellow one's
Yeah,
really
yeah,
cute,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it's huge, which I love. But yeah, that's pretty much it, I guess, in my cup of life, in my emotional cup. I did not have a heroic dream. I had a weird dream. I had a bothersome dream.
She had to take a sip.
And there is not much I can share regarding details of the dream, but let's just say it was also stressful, and I woke up feeling very anxious, and I'm still kind of trying to come down from the anxiety surrounding it all. Let's just say it was like very chaotic, speaking to a lot of the eclipses and the Aries energy that's going on. Yeah, I like ninja'd myself out of bed and just started getting ready. And so then when I like,
So then the feeling.
and it was that, but then I like forgot kind of.
Yeah.
So like as I was starting to get ready, I was like, oh my God, I feel really weird. And I feel like it's not just because I overslept. It's because of like, I just feel weird inside. Then I started thinking, I'm like, oh, I had a fucked up dream. So all that being said, we are going to have a good day today. It's beautiful and bright and sunny. So we are going to get back to baseline. We're going to go regulate by the beach, and we're going to get some stuff done because we can do all the things. We can do all the things.
Yeah.
And so
it's a good way to incorporate both, right? Like we have to
Exactly.
get work done, but like we're choosing an option that is also going to be centering, grounding. Maybe we can like, after we're done working, we can watch the sunset at the beach, you know?
Absolutely. We're choosing self-care.
Yes.
It's an act of self-care to do something like that, even though you have to get stuff done.
Right. And it makes the work more fun.
Yes, I'm going to write that on my notepad. And I believe that's it. That's how we're checking in. And we really want to get into the episode. And we hope you guys like educational. I think they
Content?
do. Yeah. We get very much into our research bag in this episode. And we kind of did that with Danielle too, with the friendship episode.
Right.
And it was so
And
good.
people really liked it.
People really
You
liked
guys
it.
really
So
liked it.
please leave feedback. Let us know what you think about these kind
Yeah.
of like more educational type
Yeah.
videos, but it's really good. And
Yeah.
we loved speaking with her.
And this guest too is like, it is a topic because she is an expert on Alzheimer's and dementia,
Yes.
brain health. So it's something that really was important to both of us and our families. Yeah. So we both have grandparents who are dealing with that disease, and it's really sad to watch, and it can feel very helpless because you don't really know what you can actually do.
And it can
to
feel
help
lonely
them.
too as a caregiver. So there's lots of options that she offers, but obviously you're going to hear our conversation. You're going to hear all about that. So we hope you guys enjoy. And without further ado, here is Dr. Mirella Santos. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Empaths Anonymous podcast. Today we have such a fantastic opportunity to speak with Dr. Mirella Diaz-Santos, who is a Spanish-English bilingual and bicultural neuropsychologist and an assistant professor in residence in the Department of Neurology. Dr. Díaz-Santos is the director and founder of Equity for Latinx-Hispanic Healthy Aging, or ELHA Lab, at UCLA Mary S. Easton Center for Alzheimer's Research and Care. Her research area specializes in the science of recruitment and retention in Alzheimer's primary prevention, clinical care, and clinical trials. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Mirella.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Of course. We've actually been wanting to talk about aging for a while. We both have grandparents who have Alzheimer's, so it's something that's really near and dear to our heart. So as soon as we found you, I'm like, oh, there's somebody who is in the community who also has a background in this. We were so excited.
No, I'm excited and honored to be sharing space with you today for sure.
Oh,
Thank you.
All right. So before we get started with the interview, we always ask our guest, what's in your cup? So what's in your cup physically, if you're sipping on something, and then what's in your cup, like how are you showing up today?
Mm. So I have my coffee.
Mm-hmm.
I simply don't drink coffee in the afternoon, but today's a little long. So I'm just sipping my latte with milk and just coffee. And in terms of how I'm showing up today, I am showing up still authentic. I had a little bit of setback after a meeting, so I always remind myself to keep myself grounded and why I'm here and why what I do is important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. Sometimes can be, depending on where you are and what you experience, almost a daily reminder, when you kind of let things like, oh, this could really get in my way, or I could just take it for what it is and remind myself the important work that I do. And it kind of helps you like get your propellers back going a little bit. Yeah, I think it might just be the energy. I had a similar experience today where I was like, ugh, it kind of took the wind out of my sails. But then I had to regroup and I had to go back to the task. So I appreciate that. I
Hmm.
appreciate the honesty, certainly. So we want to get into your background a little bit. We want to know your story. So who is Dr. Mireia as a person, and eventually what sparked your interest in the idea of quote unquote healthy aging for BIPOC community?
So if I had to be very candid about it, like Dr. Mireya or Mireya is just your typical, young kid from Puerto Rico that was navigating school and seeing what was available and not quite fitting in completely, just like knowing as a kid that I was destined to be more. I just didn't know what it meant because my parents had me when they were in their 20s, early 20s, and they are amazing parents and they still are married and they raised four girls. I'm the
Wow.
oldest,
Okay.
and not having a blueprint or the economical social capital to just like navigate school. So I'm a byproduct of public schools, right?
Mm-hmm.
But always having that mindset of like, I feel that there's something else for me that is bigger than I can even imagine. So that's basically who I am. Someone that from a young age saw the world very uniquely of like, okay, what is needed? Do I fit? And if I don't fit, I don't mold myself to fitting. I just create my own mold.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot.
All the
If
time.
something doesn't exist, sometimes you have to be the one to create it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're the eldest daughters as well, but
Mm-hmm.
both of us I have one younger brother, she has two younger brothers, and we always talk about this like sister dynamic and how that must have been. I feel like it's just a very different experience. You can be an eldest daughter and an eldest sibling of a sibling group, but I feel like the dynamic shifts so much when it's either, a brother, sister, but all sisters was a lot. So I suppose my follow up question was, what was that like? Did you have like the typical, minor arguments here or there? Were you very tight knit? What was your experience growing up with that many sisters?
Well, growing up, I recall that we had all those dynamics, right? We love each other and we're also in our throats, like
Mm-hmm.
trying to
Yes.
trying to be individuals, and we all have very different personalities. We have strong personalities, all of
Mm-hmm.
us, but we were always gravitating towards each other in different ways. I think that for me it was a little bit different because I was so focused on school. So my image of me growing up was literally studying consistently. At that time, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have all these technologies, so it was in the library
Mm-hmm.
or just finding a very quiet place in a house full of family members, like my parents, three sisters, cousins, and me wanted just to find a quiet place so I could just study. Or I wanted to be out doing sports. So that's kind of like the dynamic with my sisters, that we are very similar and very different at the same time, and we have different interests. I know that for me, given that I knew I wanted something outside what was visible, I know that I was that sister that kept going forward, checked in with them from time to time, obviously, but I was doing my own thing constantly. So the dynamics were a little bit different for sure as an older sister. So it's like
Right.
that person that creates those standards and
Right.
we don't appreciate them from time to time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely can relate on that
Right.
one.
It's just the hyper independence and just kind of coming out of like not having a choice otherwise. You just do, right? You just have to make those choices. I appreciate that. So I guess I kind of threw in a random question there about your sisters, but
No.
we did want to know what sparked your interest in healthy aging for people in Black and Brown communities, specifically Latinx communities.
Yeah, so one of the live experiences that took me to my core, and I will always say that story, is when my maternal grandmother got diagnosed with something that no one knew what it was, right? So I remember being in high school and in a math and science program in Rio Piedras, and just like trying to figure out as a 16-year-old, what am I going to do with my life? And my life is over if I don't understand what I want to do. So, that mindset and that worldview. And that's when my grandmother started declining. So I want to say that that was the impetus for me to understand what is this quote unquote dementia or Alzheimer's, which I know more now, that could change someone that you love so much completely at the point that you don't recognize them and they don't recognize themselves as well. So I just had that, I have always been a curious mind. I observe a lot, and I think this is why I became a psychologist. I pay attention to a lot of what's in front of me, including energy from individuals. And when I saw my grandmother and when I saw my family struggle with no resources, no education, nothing in Puerto Rico. It was more like, oh, she has this and no one knows what it is. So it was a very hopeless situation to be at. But given my personality, I don't like to feel hopeless or helpless or being put in a corner. I will always find a way, and I think that that's like the birth of my interest of understanding brain health, healthy aging, and Alzheimer's type dementia altogether.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What you said about someone changing entirely
Hmm.
in front of your own eyes, like it's hard to prepare family members for things like that. So we'll definitely get into that conversation a little bit more, but that is something that like probably one of the first things that family members
Hmm.
start to notice about their loved one.
Right. Yeah. And just diving into that more, like we said before, we both have family members who are in different stages of dementia. My grandma, actually, the most recent development is that she just recently had to have her car taken away, and she's been really upset about that because now
That's
she's
hard.
having to rely on other people in our family to bring her groceries and take her to appointments and things like that. And I think that just from what I've spoken to her about, it's this almost like loss of independence, and then almost feeling like, okay, well, I'm in my early 80s, but why do I feel like I'm a child again? Because I can't really do anything for myself. So it's really, really sad to watch and experience as somebody who I can't really do much for her. But
Mm-hmm.
during your clinical trials, how have you equipped yourself to be able to handle the ups and downs that a person diagnosed with dementia can experience?
Yeah, so I think that when you talk about like clinical settings, as a clinician, I think that the ups and downs is the ups is always communicating with the individual,
Mm-hmm.
right? First, because I think that that's one of the components or one of the major criticisms that physicians or doctors will always get, that because someone has or has been diagnosed with some type of dementia, that they are invisible.
Mm-hmm.
So they always talk to the spouse or the children and grandchildren. So I think that the ups in how to manage those dynamics starts with respect and dignity, and understanding that that individual is still that individual, right? So I think that that's something that I have encountered in my experience as a clinician and also as a researcher is, okay, you meet them where they are. I think that the downs for me in particular, um, as someone that consumes research for myself, for my family, and the communities, is that research in general doesn't include us at all, right? So
Right.
that's why I specialize in how do we build community and partnerships so individuals that are higher risk of having Alzheimer's type dementia are actually included in the conversations and included in the studies. The reason why I'm mentioning that is that that's a huge downside of my experiences, because everything that I convey to the individual, to the caregiver, to the spouse, to the family members or community stakeholders or members is always with, and this the caveat, that we actually don't know how Alzheimer's, for example, in our communities will manifest,
Right.
right? So we know the general ideas. Algo is a memory problem. But what does that mean? How does it manifest? And then how does it progresses, right? And then having a system, understanding the downs as well, that we have a system that not every physician or doctor is trained on the topic of dementia and how to talk to the individual and the
Right.
family members. So there's a lot of ups and downs, but I think that the ups for me is always being, you know, hand by hand with the family and the individual, and just being very honest and transparent of what we know and what we don't know, and then help them assimilate that information, because there's a lot of limitations with our science.
Right. Yeah. Even in my own research for the couple of classes I'm taking, I'm a psychology student. I struggle very much. It's like I'm trying to find information on, people immigrating to the United States who are learning English maybe as their third language because they are from an indigenous community. And it's just like very, very minimal
Yep.
work done. And it just contributes to that group feeling invisible as they already
Mm-hmm.
do, especially moving to a
Mm-hmm.
country where there's not spaces made for them to feel comfortable. So that actually came up in one of my classes the other day. And I'm like talking to my professor, I'm like, I'm struggling.
Mm-hmm.
I'm struggling to find information that helps me write what I need to write. So
Right.
along those same lines, here recently we've all been hearing conversations, having discussions about the DEI initiatives kind of being rolled back from big companies, corporate America. I think I saw a video the other day that Target is $15 billion in losses, um, just from that rollback alone. So could you share along that same vein why inclusion in the field of research is so crucial to implementing then medical treatments like you're talking about with someone who may have been recently diagnosed with dementia?
Yes. So I think everyone that their values and work is aligns with, equity, diversity, inclusion, or other acronyms that they might be using. Everyone is in shock. Everyone is struggling. We have the conversations every day about what are we doing? What are we going to do? How should we call this? And I think that one component that I can emphasize for all of us just to consume this reality. Research dictates healthcare,
Right.
right? ¿Qué pasa? That for until the 90s, I believe, all the research participants that produce the data, and the data produce results, and you have the innovations, were coming mostly from non-Hispanic white men, right? And that includes animal research, that they were used mice, male mice, right?
Oh, wow.
So yep, yes. So
Okay.
when we're thinking about even the antibiotics, contemplate why is it that so many women will have a yeast infection because of the antibiotics,
Right. Wow,
right?
I never thought about it that way because it wasn't tested on us.
Right. I
You're
avoid
right.
taking them. I got them prescribed to me the other day, and I was like, no.
Right. So it's like, oh, you need medication for the virus, and at the same time, so it's like those are the components that I like to kind of like bring into light. That research dictates healthcare, and it's just a cyclical process.
Right.
When we engage in the values of we all should be part of these conversations and the research planning and also the research participants, that taps into how the science can can be applicable to everyone, right? So right now, that's the conversation that I would love for all of us to have, is understanding that if we continue to create and invest in research that only taps into one particular communities that have been dictating the science and the findings and the innovation, that means the quality of the healthcare, the interventions, the medication, the diagnostics. When we talk about dementia, the diagnostic tools are not completely valid, right, for
Right.
our different communities, right? So that leads into misdiagnosis, late diagnosis. So it's understanding that component why when we talk about including everyone in the conversation and the research designs and participations to ensure that everyone has the same treatment that works for all of us, right? I know that right now I can tap into the concept of precision medicine because we all know already that one science doesn't generalize to all, right? But those are the confusing parts of the conversation because we're rolling out or we're taking out efforts, but that actually goes against the movement of precision medicine because there's a long history that not all medications or interventions are applicable. So you need to take a holistic component, a holistic view of the individual for the treatment to work. So that's what I'll have to say. Like, it's just fascinating because it means that a lot of people, and that can also include the groups that are a majority, that the treatments might not be applicable for them as well, and they will also continue the suffering. So that's the other part that we don't think about.
Right.
And those in leadership, they don't think about either, that it just impacts all of us because
Correct.
we're not receiving the care that we individually need.
Right.
Yeah. It's similar to the ideologies of patriarchy. It affects everybody. We have the conversation all the time. Like, it just doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
it's not a disservice to just one marginalized community. Like, it affects
Right.
us as a whole.
It's a trickle down.
Yeah. I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
ask you if this is a good example of how maybe an instrument being used to measure something is not inclusive of a culture. So, before my maternal grandfather got diagnosed, he's still in his early stages of dementia, but also cannot drive. The movement's really slow. So, we're starting to see some cognitive declines. But before he was diagnosed, they had him take this test. I'm sure you're very familiar, and he had to like draw a clock from memory. So, and they had him take this test in Spanish. That's his first language. He speaks English very well, but reading and writing Spanish is easier for him. And he still didn't score very well in Spanish. So we're thinking, okay, like, I get it. He's going to get the diagnosis. But are the questions, even the way that they're translated in Spanish, do they make sense to someone who's lived his life?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a good example of an instrument that is just not inclusive?
Yes, it is because till this moment, and I'm 40, and I left when I was 22, and my grandmother passed away before that. I still don't know which test her
Wow.
primary care physician
Oh.
gave her
Yeah.
that led to the diagnosis, right? But as a neuropsychologist that specializes in those tests, I kind of have a feeling of which one they gave her, and I have a feeling of which one you are referring to. So, to your question, so it goes back to what we were talking before. So, these instruments are coming directly from research money. Research money comes from taxpayers. I want people to understand that, right? It's coming from taxpayers. Okay. So these instruments are conceptualized through the worldview and cultures of those in power and in leadership. Correct. So that means that the way that they design the tests, create the questions, decide that the clock is the most inclusive, and kind of subtests because it captures a lot of visuals, like a lot of cognitive abilities. Yes. The key component here that, for example, I don't know if you're referring to the mini cog. The mini cog has the clock, right? Is that if we look closely, we always need to look closely who was included in those studies. So to your question, so we have a study, we just finished a study here at UCLA in primary care where we use a mini cog, right? And we always ask the question, does it make sense to you as a physician or the nurses? And they continue to say, we have to adapt the questions because the patients won't understand them. And I'm like, interesting. So I'm giving you a long story short to say that those screenings have a lot of limitations because it assumes access to certain types of lived experiences through education access,
Right.
right?
Yes.
So, to your question, is the clock poorly designed because there's actually pathology in the brain impacting all those areas, or is it because the individual never learned how to draw a clock,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Not because they're not smart, not because they're not competent, or is it because the instrument it doesn't capture the nuances of the individuals that we are testing,
Right.
right? So, like going back, so I agree with you. Even the sentences, how you compose the sentences from English to Spanish, we love storytelling. We love to talk, right? And if you tell me, memorize those three questions or these three words, our grandparents will be like, for what? Pa qué? So they don't, right? Pa qué? So it's not completely valid. But I'm mentioning that because that product in the cognitive screener or cognitive test is byproduct of research. And research is designed through the lens of who's in power, through the lens of the cultures and live experiences and how they live their world. Typically, our communities are not part of those conversations, right? So this is where we don't know if the test is valid or not, which imposes a lot of responsibility to the clinician to figure it out. But some clinicians are actually not trained on how to do that either.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And in that instance, if we keep running into the same issue where your clinicians and nurses are saying we have to adjust the test every time to the person, at
Mm-hmm.
what point do the people in power who are creating these tests or have the power to change them say, well, instead of having somebody run into the same experience every single day where they're having to translate a test or change a
Mm-hmm.
test or
It's like a
explain it.
reinterpretation. It's like a
Yeah.
reinterpretation on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, like, our
Mm-hmm.
physicians and nurses, our healthcare workers are spending so much time having to explain the task rather than letting the research do what it's supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
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 So just as a side note, when you modify an instrument away from the standardization, that by itself makes it invalid,
Mm.
right? So we do it, or the physicians and the nurses of those in the administration will do it because they're committed to provide the best care. But that's all the responsibility falls onto us, falls onto them, right? But the key component here is that the key question is, why is it that in that these instruments are not aligning with specific individuals from specific backgrounds and intersectionalities? And then the other follow up is like, how can we fix it? Do we create something new, or do we involve the population of interest in the conversation, right? So in science, they don't. In science, something that we gravitate always towards is that if it ain't broken, why fix it, right? So you need to quantify that there's an issue and then propose a solution. So I'm mentioning that because I saw that in primary care, and I have the question: is the instrument tapping into the cognitive constructs that it's supposed to be tapping? So I received some funding here at UCLA to actually work with older adults in Spanish so they can tell me what they think about that test and whether it's measuring what it's supposed to measure or not.
Yeah.
Right. Ooh, that's
Oh, my
great.
grandpa would tell you what he thought about this.
Right.
I
Right.
hate
He
that
would
test.
volunteer.
I hate that test. Stupid test.
I
I love
agree.
yeah.
I,
You
I
know,
agree that.
and it breeds this frustration where it's like I'm being measured and I feel like I'm being made to feel a certain way. I'm being made to feel small. I'm being made to feel uneducated. You know, it's
Mhm.
he I think went up to maybe 6th grade or 8th grade if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken. So that contributes to it. And those factors have to be taken into account when you're building out an instrument. So yeah, lots to consider, and I suppose it's the work that you're doing at the lab is just reworking some of those things to be more inclusive of communities that seem to be getting diagnosed at higher rates,
Right.
but at later times in life, you
Right.
know?
Which was kind of my follow up question because so my dad's mom has dementia and my mom's dad, he passed away, but he had dementia. And even just seeing the differences in their experience just from male and female was very drastic. But now I'm even imagining within different culture groups, there must be these big gaps of how people are experiencing that dementia. So through Ella, are you able to see or have a little bit more control over the results or like how how patients are being treated? Are you having a different experience since founding ELHA, or is it still kind of you're running against the same hurdles?
I think it's a little combination of both. I think
Okay.
that one aspect that we continue to encounter every time that we are with communities is that there's a few things. One, that most of the older adults, Spanish speakers, or older adults in general that we have engaged, they have never been through a cognitive test, right? So that speaks one huge barrier because Medicare allows now to do that cognitive test when you're 65 and older for prevention purposes, right? So that's one thing. And another thing is that our communities, and how will they know? They have never seen a neuropsychologist or a neurologist or someone that specializes in dementia, right? So there's a, and then when we talk about dementia, dementia, está loco. It's not something that like no one wants to hear that, right? So it's like
Right.
it's a huge stigma. Está loco taps into mental health. Está loco means I cannot talk about it. Yo lavo ¿cómo se dice en español? Lavo mi trapo sucio en la casa. It's like I will just keep everything in the inside.
Yeah.
So we are being seeing these dynamics and these myths about cognition and Alzheimer's that is completely predictable by genetics, just to break through those narratives that have been imposed and disseminated across generations, so we can tap into the question and the methods of how actually can we help each other,
Yeah.
right? To increase timely like detection, differentials, like Alzheimer's is by exclusion of other medical and emotional comorbidities. So it's like going through the deep conversations. We have been seeing that our communities are more open to have these conversations with me and my team, but we have been doing this for like almost 3 years now. So 3 years later, now we're getting into the conversations of, okay, this is what we need to modify with the science to avoid misdiagnosis or late diagnosis.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think that we're seeing with each generation, we're all getting a little bit more open, but it begs this, urgency of like, well, we can't wait until we're in our, 50s, 60s, 70s in order to have the conversations, because at that point, if we know that it runs in our family, if we already have stages of dementia developing, it can be a little bit too late. So I had a question here, but I'm switching my direction because,
Okay.
I mean, just as, two women who have it run in our family, my question's going to be kind of twofold. So I'll ask it to you in
Okay.
different parts. The first part is, as family members, how can we be more supportive of our loved ones? What are ways that we as family members can support them, love them, rally around them so they don't feel, esta loca, and there's
I
not that
know.
stigma, and kind of removing the stigma for them so that they, feel a little bit more open to be seen and heard where they are.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I run a support group of Latina caregivers every Monday, and those are the conversations that they have. And there's never a straightforward answer to like how do you show up. I think that one aspect that we continue to explore is how can you show up for them while you show up for you and manage how you're feeling, right? Because obviously when you see your loved one declining, there's just a constant grief that you are going through as an individual, as a grandchild, as a daughter, as a son, like someone. It's just it's not pleasant to see. And I remember that as a young adult, I was like, how, like, what can I do? Can I ask her? Can I ask her, do you remember me? And that's something that we typically do. And actually, it's not a good strategy
Right.
per se. Do you remember who I am? Oh yeah, don't worry. If I ask those questions, it will stimulate her or their brain. As I know, it will increase their frustration,
Right.
right? And they will shut down more. So I think that one component that we continue to converse with loved ones is checking where you are emotionally. We tend to project a lot of our insecurities and a lot of our fears to our loved ones. And it's just, how do you check yourself first? Where are you at, right? And understanding that every day with a loved one that is going through this journey, every day or every second is different. So we always talk about meet them where they are, right? So it's like, if they are focusing on a task, how do you gently acknowledge the task, see them eye to eye, have those conversations, enjoy the moment, and then slowly kind of like shifting focus
Right.
in a gentle way. So there's not a like a one answer to your question per se, besides see where you are at, see where you're like, how are you processing this constant loss, verbalize that with your supportive system, so then you can decrease the noise, the
Right.
emotional noise,
Yes.
right? So you can just pay attention to seeing them where they are, what they need. Can you show them pictures? Is that a good strategy? Can they dance? Do they want to talk about their past? For example, they love to talk about their past because that area is still solid.
Right.
So it's more like, how do you breathe knowing that you probably know the same story just because they want to share that story
Right.
with you?
Yeah. And acting like this is the first time you've ever heard it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, so lots of stuff happening on every different side of every family, right? So right now it's my maternal grandfather who is kind of early middle dementia, but also my paternal grandmother passed away in 2016 from full blown
Mm.
Alzheimer's. And when we moved her into a home health, it was like very late stages. It was the dancing, it was reverting to Spanish only, and a lot of laughter. Oh my goodness, she laughed so much. Probably the most I ever heard her laugh in my whole life. She was always very like happy, very put together kind of lady. But just the constant laughter and always talking about like her life in Mexico and her dad and just all those memories were just so solid to her. So even though she thought that her son, my dad, was her boyfriend,
Mm-hmm.
she was going to share the stories, you know?
Yeah.
And it was hard for my dad, and I saw those things happen. So it's even like it's a trickle down. It's, the person who's like very close, not quite the caregiver, but maybe the person that sees them the most often. For
Mm-hmm.
my dad, it was him with his mom. For my mom, it's her with her dad. And being the grandchild, it's like I'm hurting for like double the people, you know? I'm hurting for myself. I'm hurting for my mom. And then, of course, I'm hurting for my grandfather. So it's meeting everybody where they're at. It's meeting my mom where she's at with it for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's her meeting where he's there. We was just over here on Saturday actually, and he tried to get water for himself. And so we're trying, to not try to do everything for him. But it was just
Right.
like water everywhere.
Yeah.
I have a toddler who can like slip and fall on the tile, so my mom's like trying to clean it up, and just it's a delicate balance. It's
It
really
is.
delicate. Yeah. But I like the redirection, like not making them feel like they can't do it, but
Right.
just kind of make like shifting a little bit and seeing kind of where they're at. And I think she saw where he was at and she couldn't make any type of correction or redirection, so she just let him spill the water on the floor.
Yeah.
you
Right.
know? And
Yeah.
but he probably felt really good for filling up his own water. And I think
Yeah.
that's the point.
It's like little small things
Yeah.
that we can do. So
Yeah.
I like what you said, checking in with yourself first and kind of trying to show up as a more regulated version of yourself for that person. That's a really good tip, because I think that's something that everybody can, no matter what the situation is or what stage the person may be, I think that that's something that we can all implement into, how we can show up for our loved ones a lot better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I may, the other part that I will add is everyone is human. So even if you cannot check in with yourself or you are on another level, it's like forgiving yourself for it. That's another conversation that I have with the caregivers. It's like you are learning and there's not a manual of how to do everything. In every condition, when it comes to Alzheimer's or other type of dementias, the neuropathology will tap different brain areas, so no one can know, okay, so now I can do this, now I can do that. So everyone is going to not do it right per se.
Right.
And in those days, I know the guilt, shame, a lot of those emotions will come by. And understanding is that you're trying to do the best that you can with the resources and knowledge that you have to take care of your loved one. So remind yourself of that as well.
Right. Yeah, the
Okay.
forgiveness.
Yes.
Yeah. The
Also
second
a
oh, go
daily
ahead.
choice.
Right.
A daily choice is forgiveness, self-forgiveness. Please
Yeah,
go ahead.
and that you're not going to do everything right. Okay, so the second part of my dual question. So first is, how do we show up best for our loved ones? The second part is, as somebody who has dementia run in their family, how can we better take care of ourselves? And I mean, I know prevention could probably be an entire episode on itself, but how can we better take care of ourselves when we know that that could be a possibility down our lives, or what steps can we take to prevent it and protect our brain health?
Yes, so these are the conversations that I constantly have with myself, friends, family, community members, because all this literature remains in journals, academic journals, and there's kind of like a firewall that no one can access them either. Um, so we're talking about access to this literature. So I agree with you. This will be a whole conversation and happy to have it. I think that the main component here is the way that I process it myself is okay. I do have a family history. It's not familial based on what I'm sensing because there's some idiopathic, meaning that it will happen in some families randomly, and other families it will happen because there's a huge genetic or polygenetic component that increases their risk. So you have all family members having it.
Right.
So so for me, it's I don't see a strong genetic component, and the literature is saying that for our different communities, genetics are not doesn't have the same impact on cognitive decline compared to non-Hispanic whites,
Okay.
Okay.
right?
Wow.
That's good
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
information. Okay.
Right? But again, like so that's why the science and it's still
Right.
limited, right? The science is like, oh, it's all genetics. Well, so there's some literature that has been suggesting that the main genetic risk factor that everyone has talked about, ApoE4, doesn't have the same impact on cognitive decline or conversion to dementia in our Latinx Hispanic communities, right? But that depends on the sample. So knowing all of that, what I typically gravitate towards myself and our conversations is let's go back to the basics. Okay? Let's go back to the basis of how much water are we drinking, right? How much rest are we getting? How much movement am I getting every day? How much space and supportive system do I have where I can vent or process? And I'll tell you why the reason behind that. Um, what am I eating or what do I have access of eating, right? So how does my plate looks? So if you think about it, this is where a doctor will tell you all the time, sleep well, do exercise. You know, you need to shake your eyes. You need to shake, go to the dentist. You need to, don't smoke. Don't, so all those things. So the main rationale here is that by now we know, so there are 14 modifiable risk factors that can reduce our risk of dementia for approximately 45-48%,
Okay.
right? And one of them is access to education, right? But redefine education, like
Right.
constant stimulation, constant reading, or constant like learning something, like for the audience in the podcast or the videos. It's like you want to keep your brain active. A huge component. Exercise is not only good for your heart, gut, and looking good, and it's also good for your mental health and your brain health, right? Exercise has been tied to increased neuroplasticity in the hippocampus, which is the main area that Alzheimer's attacks, right? Sleep is also very important because this is where sleep is kind of like a washing machine that cleans all the toxins while it sleeps. And that includes the possible proteins associated with Alzheimer's, right?
Okay.
Water. Our brain is almost 80, 85, cannot remember the exact name, is composed of mostly water. So those are the things, and it doesn't matter when you start. I think that that's one key message.
Okay.
You should definitely start as soon as you get that aha moment. It's like, oh, I can protect my brain and I can do all these steps. Start doing it. Because what we want to ensure is that we continue to create neuroplasticity. Our brain just like having that jungle gym, creating new connections, new neurons. Because the thicker your brain is, the neuropathology of dementia has to work harder to kind of like break down the brain in order to show the symptoms. But the stronger it is, the more work you're giving them. So you might have the neuropathology, but you might not show symptoms,
Right. Okay. That's
right? So
really
it doesn't matter when you start.
That's really encouraging to hear because I
Yeah.
mean, we just turned 33 and I feel like something just happens in your early 30s where it's like, at least for me, I turned 30, 31. I'm like, oh, I should probably start like caring about my holistic health more
Yeah.
because, like you
Mm-hmm.
said, it's like all of these things affect so many different factors of our health. And sure,
Right.
like we go to the doctor and they say, all the things like eat healthy, go to the gym, get 8 hours of sleep. And you're like, yeah, yeah, okay. But then you get older and you're like, oh, those were very simple things. And I thought they were just like telling me that just because that's the thing to tell me. But like, no, it really does affect so many different areas of your health.
No, absolutely. So that's why I like to just have that conversation because it clicks. It's like, oh, so that's why they're telling me to go to the dentist, for example. The dentist is important because you have blood circulation in your gums, right? So if you get like an infection in your gum, it will cross the brain blood barrier, right?
Right.
Or those toxins in your gums will just accumulate in the brain. So it's just those little components. It's just understanding that everything that you do, it will impact your brain,
Yes.
right? So if it will impact your brain, just feed your life and your day to day as much as you can with positive things that the literature tells you.
Yeah.
Drink water, eat vegetables, unless like we don't like them, but we just eat the vegetables, be green, sleep, and so forth. So that's the reason. And understanding that you can be 30 now, you can be 20. I'm in my 40s, in the 60s. It's just do it. Just do
Yeah.
it.
I feel like I have that conversation with my dad all the time about like it's never too late to do anything that you want to do, especially if it's going to benefit you in the long run. But yeah, such a good conversation. I am going to give you a few little minutes to say where everyone can find you on social media. But I did want to ask, in regard to the social group that you do for ELHA, is that in person only?
What do you mean for the
The
caregivers?
support group, yeah, for caregivers, yeah.
No, it's virtual.
Ooh, I
So
love
it's
that.
yeah, it is virtual. It is free of charge. It's in Spanish. It's for any individual caring for a loved one with a type of dementia or cognitive decline, and it's via Zoom.
Okay.
Oh, that's
Okay.
awesome.
Couple of people on my list to send the
Right.
link to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We definitely want to respect your time as we're getting to the end. But as Danny said, we want to give you a chance to let our audience know where they can find you if they want more information.
Yes, absolutely. So you can find me through my digital engagement projects through my lab. So it's the ELHA Lab, the Equity for Latinx Hispanic Healthy Aging Lab. We are in Instagram, we are on Facebook. We do have a YouTube channel. That's a different project that we want to engage our communities in short videos just to have these little snippets
Right.
of knowledge more consumable.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
and you can visit us at UCLA. We're here in Los Angeles. We are, if you're in LA County, we're always partnering with our stakeholders so you can see us in person. If there's a community senior center or a church, or we will go there.
Okay.
Awesome.
We love that so much. Everything will be linked in the show notes for anyone who wants to visit any of those websites. And like Christina said earlier, like we could have so many separate episodes about so many different things and all these conversations that we want to continue to have. So we appreciate your time. We appreciate you sharing the wealth of knowledge that you have on this, and specifically within our community. So thank you so much.
No, muchas gracias a las dos. Ha sido un honor estar con ustedes en el día de hoy.
All right, you guys. We honestly, I mean, I feel like I say this about every single guest, but we honestly could have kept talking to her. I saw the sun going down just in her background in her office, and I was like, oh, it's getting late.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, we need to let her
She's gotta
go.
go home. She's gotta go home. Yeah, so good. That's why if you guys follow us on Instagram, you know that we posted a meme at the end of the 2024, right? With Cynthia and Ariana on our green velvet couch. And that's why it's pinned up there still to this day. I don't think it'll ever get unpinned.
Honestly, it's just the truth of the situation.
It's always true. You've been the light of the day.
Literally.
It's true for everybody. And I mean it the same for every single person.
Yeah.
But especially someone who just comes, you know me. I mean, obviously I'm a student. I love to learn.
Yeah.
I'm in my education bag, bitch. So anyone that's going to come with like that much knowledge about something that we both care deeply about, I'm like, oh,
give me the research.
Give
me
it
the
to
clinicals.
me.
Tell me the things that are locked up in the secret. What did she say that like nobody
It's
else
journ-
can
so, okay.
access? I'm
So
like,
here's the lore on academic journals. You must be a student enrolled in some kind of higher education institution to be able to access some of these studies. Most of these studies. There's thousands and thousands of journals.
Right.
There was actually...
But what good does that do for people?
A lot of the time you have to pay. You can pay per year to access an entire journal, and then you have thousands and thousands of articles you can...
Right. Okay.
But that's just one journal.
Right.
So I just wrote about this actually in one of my courses. It's about ethics. It's about access to knowledge that will help marginalized communities. So if you don't have those things published for free where people can use them, and it costs you $50 for one article.
Right.
One.
That's crazy. Yeah.
You can't. So it's, again, another conversation.
Yeah.
I'm sure we can
powers
couple
that
that
be.
in. Yeah, we can couple that in as far as like access to actual academic research, as well as preventative measures so that we all don't end up with dementia in our late 60s or whenever that'll be for any of us.
Right.
Such good nuggets. I was really, really surprised about how not all dementia in every single family is genetic.
Yeah, that is really interesting.
Another thing to talk about, is that trauma induced? Is it specific to someone's trauma?
Well, so there's another, I'll link this too. Normally I wouldn't tell you to go listen to another podcast, but hey, we're both podcast lovers over here. I don't mind.
Link it.
Share the love, share the ears and the knowledge. Empowered by Gina. She was on her podcast because they're friends. And she talks about in Latina communities, a lot of it can be trauma induced.
Yes, she did talk about that with Gina.
Yeah.
Honestly, I did not know about Gina's podcast until today.
Right.
And I'm like sad that I didn't know about Gina's podcast until today. So a
the
follow
only
from
reason
me.
that I know about it is from previous work, previous job.
Okay.
Because we would send her clients a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. A fan of me. It automatically started playing the next episode and I let it play because I was like, I'm going to let this rock because I'm interested in the person and the conversation.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
I don't care. I'll link 20,000 podcasts on our own podcast.
She's a great interviewer. She just feels very warm, you know?
Yeah. And I like how she kind of ad-libs the way that we do. And she's not, you can tell she's not trying to interrupt her guest. But at the same time, she's like, shut up. She's like, no
way.
I love it.
I know.
Yeah, really good. There's so many takeaways that I have from this, but what have you got going on in your noggin? How did you feel about it?
I feel relief on one hand because like she said, it's never too late to start. But also it kind of just feels like I'm a giant bozo, like duh. You know, I think because of my own experiences with healthcare, I just don't take very much weight to what doctors tell me. And so, I mean, it's great because it's simple things that we all can do.
It's almost like a tit for tat. Like, well, you dismissed me, I'm going to dismiss you.
Exactly. But even just like hearing like the things that we've been told since we were young, like get good sleep, eat vegetables, eat healthy and exercise. Like those are things that can prevent and that can keep your brain strong and healthy. And I mean, I think that we both in different ways are like lifelong learners. Like I'm always going to want to learn new shit. So it's like, that's good. I really have been wanting to carve out more time for reading just to, I feel like I need to expand my brain.
You're looking at someone who has the access. So anything you want to know about, I'll do a search for you.
Right.
I'll do a peer-reviewed search.
Yeah. I just want to expand, like keep expanding my brain, keep working my brain. And even, I mean, this is like brain fog that is probably not medically induced. That's not the word I want. But because of health issues, I do experience a lot of brain fog, mental health issues and physical health issues. And so sometimes I just feel like I know what I'm trying to say in here, but because of the brain fog, like I can't think of words. I feel like sometimes I sound stupid. You know? I just want to expand my vocabulary more, and they say the best way to do that is to just read more. Yeah.
It's honestly, it's not you. It's an American epidemic. Americans don't know how to read, y'all.
Yeah.
We're speaking to teachers who have students at the secondary level, 6th through 8th grade, about to go into high school, who are reading at like 1st and 2nd grade level.
Wow.
We are struggling as a nation to make reading fundamental. It's, look, if you're going to talk to me about reading, I'm not the person to talk to about reading because I'm obsessed. I love to read. Like even when I'm done reading for school, I'll go read for fun.
Right.
So it's like, I can't understand why someone else would understand that reading is so imperative to your brain health,
right?
To building a huge lexicon and having a lot of vocabulary words to choose from, and just overall immersing yourself into a completely different world. Why would that not be fun? Hello?
I love the idea of reading. It's the act of reading.
It's the actual sitting down and be like, I'm going to read this instead of scroll.
Right.
Totally guilty of that myself.
Definitely.
And
it's
I'm
like, more of an audio learner. So that too has, even since I was young, I learn better like audibly than I do visually reading.
Okay.
And so that's why like I do like my audiobooks, but it's just not the same experience.
Right. She's an auditory processor. Take a test. You might figure out you are one too. And I have some of my students and people that I've known throughout my life are the exact opposite. You say something to them and it's like, I did not process that at all.
Right.
So it's a cognitive thing.
Yeah.
You're trying to figure out how you process stuff. And some people listen and they're like, I totally got that, what you're saying. Lecture style is really good for me. You know, I love that. or put me in front of like an interactive game.
Yeah.
You know, let's play a quiz where I can like click on things because I'm kinesthetic and I like to touch stuff. So just learn. It's like learning styles all throughout life. It's gonna follow you forever.
Right.
But yeah, so good. I love it. I'm kind of obsessed.
Me too.
You guys follow her on all the socials. We were also going to link the support group, which I'm sure she talks about on her Instagram as well.
That was so great. We'd love to do a Q&A with her in the future. Yes. So definitely reply to this. If you're on Spotify, reply to this with some questions. That way they're all kept in one spot. Yeah, please. And then in the future, when we are getting ready to have her on again, we'll put it on our socials so you guys can ask us some questions. Yeah.
Yay.
Did you have a favorite part or like a good aha lights on moment?
I just love what she's doing at the lab. Like to be on the fly on the wall. I just got to go to the lab. You guys, I got to go.
I love what she's doing at the lab.
Stop.
She's like, that just really gets me going.
It got me going. I'm like, I got to get to the lab. She's like, come see us. And I'm like, I will go see you.
If there's one thing about me,
I'm going to go to the lab. I love that she is really involving the community. I mean, 3 years of work and how much has gotten done so far and how many people have been involved in these studies and being able to reach out to a community that, you know, had this stigma attached to something that's out of their control, really, as far as we know. It's like we're trying to take it back into our control as much as we possibly can. So for me, it's always going to be the people. If you have other people involved, especially people of marginalized communities like the Latina community, you know, I would love that to just go see. Yeah. That was it for me. So we hope you guys enjoyed. We did.
Of course. Thoroughly.
Yes. Very much, if you can't tell.
Yeah. Yes. If you made it to the end of the episode, comment with a brain emoji.
I was going to say brain.
Really?
Brain. You guys remember Lil Dicky? Deep cut. My brain. I'll show it to you.
I don't know. And
comment with a brain emoji.
And share this episode with a friend if you loved it. If you have a loved one, family member, etc., who you feel like this would be a great resource for, please share it. And that's really all I got. You got anything?
That's it. Love y'all. See you next time.
See you later. Thanks for tuning in to this week's EA meeting.
If you liked this episode, please share it with a friend and leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple or Spotify. We'd love to hear from you.
You can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at empathsandonpod.
Don't forget to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts or subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on the notification bell so you're the first to know when we release a new episode.
We'll meet you back here on the Green Velvet Couch next time.
Bye, Feelers!